Believe it or not, this green slime can produce flowers. This is the smallest vascular plant in the world. This is Wolffia oryza. Also called spotless watermeal or rootless duckweed, this plant lives around the world and it prefers aquatic environments, particularly really quiet waters like this pond here. These tiny little spheres are only about 1 millimeter wide and they weigh only as much as 2 grains of table salt. And while these are vascular plants, meaning they have a xylem to uptake water and nutrients and a phloem to move the sugars they make around, they do not have roots. They're just going to be little green dots floating on top of the water. And while these little plants can produce flowers, most of the time they're just going to reproduce by vegetative reproduction, by just having this little bud that grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it just pops off. When the conditions are right and it does decide to flower, it will only produce one per plant. So again, because these plants are so small, that in the middle is that flower. The flower is only going to have 1 stamen and 1 pistil. The stamen has the pollen and the pistil has the ovary and the egg. And once it's fertilized, that ovary will turn into the smallest fruit of the Wolffia genus. Now if it gets a bit cool for the plant to be active, it will go into a dormancy stage. It will sink to the bottom and create what's called a turion. Now because of that vegetative reproduction and the fact that it's budding pretty much all the time, they can double their population in about 4 days. So this has been used as a really cheap food source for people in Thailand, Burma, and Laos, particularly because they can harvest every 3 to 4 days and they essentially have an infinite supply of food. So not only can we get large quantities quite quickly, they're also very nutritious, containing about 40% protein and 40% starch. They also contain high amounts of calcium, zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B12. This plant is what's called a mixotroph, meaning it not only can do photosynthesis and produce its own carbon like other autotrophic plants, but it can also absorb dissolved carbon from its environment, so it gets its carbon from 2 different sources. Mixotroph. Duckweed has also had some success in treating agricultural and municipal waters. One study found that 75% of phosphorus and nitrogen uptake was attributed to duckweed, whether that be directly through the plant or indirectly via the bacteria that rely on these plants. Now this particular species has been used to clean the waters in black tiger shrimp farms, and then they can be used again as feed for carp and tilapia, and this is to replace what would have been soybean meal.